America, all you needed was a chance. One shot to prove to the world that you are not what the news and the media portray you as. That you have this culture, this scenery, the people are amazing.
The biggest trucks in the UK look so small in comparison to the trucks in America.
F-150 could be the best choice of vehicle in the UK.
Do you really think a country that Europeans have spent decades mocking for its gas stations and its guns could turn around and make 500,000 of them post the same 5 words online? I was wrong about America? Because that's basically what's been happening for weeks now. Ever since the 2026 World Cup opened its gates and a wave of European fans got dropped, jet-lagged and skeptical, straight into the middle of the country they thought they already understood. If you want more videos like this, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Because this tournament has produced more culture shock content than any World Cup before it, and we're only getting started. Here's the thing nobody expected going in.
An American car wash, look at this. How fancy is that? Many countries you don't have all these lights and stuff, but American car wash, that hits differently. Ain't no way! America! They go full legal. $40 a month subscription. And Jonathan, he goes every day. Everything. You got everything done here. Look at that. I almost feel like my body is getting clean also. Wow.
Analysts at Tourism Economics projected something like 1.2 million international visitors would pour into the 11 U.S. host cities for this tournament, a number big enough to reshape hotel occupancy and local spending for the entire summer. And yet, in the months leading up to kickoff, European booking data actually told a more cautious story. Air traffic analytics firm Cirium reported bookings from Europe to the U.S. were down roughly 14% compared to the year before, with the steepest drops coming out of cities like Frankfurt, Paris, and Amsterdam. So the people who did show up weren't the effortlessly enthusiastic types. Many of them were already carrying doubts, worries, or flat-out negative assumptions about the country they were about to spend a month living inside of. That's what makes what happened next so interesting. This isn't a story about people who expected to love America. It's a story about people who expected to be uncomfortable, and instead found themselves recording videos they never planned to make. Start with the part nobody warns you about. The people. European social norms tend to run a little cooler in public polite distance, minimal small talk with strangers, a general assumption that you handle your own business and let others handle theirs. So when a Scottish tourist wandering through a Texas gas station gets pulled into a 15-minute conversation with a stranger about football, gas station food, and where he's from, it registers as something closer to culture shock than kindness. Multiply that by a stadium security guard cracking jokes with fans in the security line, by a diner waitress topping off a coffee without being asked and refusing a tip for it, by a family at a tailgate waving over visibly lost tourists and handing them a plate before they'd even asked for directions, and you start to see why hospitality became one of the most repeated words across the entire tournament's worth of travel content. One European visitor, reflecting on a small-town encounter days after it happened, admitted online that it had genuinely reshaped how he thought about the country, not because anything dramatic occurred, but because a total stranger treated him like an old friend for no reason at all. Would you rather live somewhere colder, but more private, or somewhere warmer, but a little more in your business? Because that's the actual trade-off being debated in these comment sections right now. Then there's scale. which might be the single most memed theme of the entire tournament.
And receive certainly Thomas Tuchel as being a lot more adventurous and aggressive.
Duet. Looking for an opening. Hernandez, he loves to go venturing forward, suddenly springing to life.
A Texas chain called buc-ee's. Technically a gas station, though calling it that undersells it about as much as calling the Grand Canyon a ditch, has become a full-blown viral sensation among visiting fans, who keep describing it as something like a theme park crossed with a supermarket crossed with a gift shop, built around 50-some soda flavors, a wall of barbecue, and bathrooms large enough to be tourist attractions in their own right. It's the kind of place that doesn't really have a European equivalent, because the entire European retail model is built around smaller footprints and denser cities. Add in supermarkets the size of small airports, highways with 8 lanes running through open desert, pickup trucks that look like they were built for a different, larger species of human being, and you start to understand why so much of this content reads less like travel vlogging and more like visitors trying to process something that genuinely broke their sense of scale.
This guy says America takes the fan experience to another level.
There is literally no way that this is real. Just look at this. Oh my word. This is incredible. America is literally so advanced because I don't even need to go to the stadium anymore. I can literally just watch the game here. Literally crazy.
These European fans made one thing very clear. They weren't ready for the trip to end.
One widely shared clip captured a group of Scottish visitors who'd rented a house for the tournament, deciding the appropriate way to greet a new American neighborhood at 6 in the morning was with a full set of bagpipes, which, depending who you ask, is either an international incident or the single most American thing a European has ever done on American soil. Geography does something similar, except this time, it's not comedy, it's humility. A lot of European travelers arrive with a rough mental map built on countries you can drive across in an afternoon. Then they're told that Rangel St. Elias National Park and Preserve in Alaska alone covers something like 13.2 million acres, an area larger than the entire country of Switzerland, and bigger than Yellowstone, Yosemite, and the Grand Canyon combined, all folded into a single park unit. Death Valley, just by itself and without any help from Alaska, still comes in around 3.4 million acres in the contiguous states. Across the full system of 63 national parks, visitation numbers have run into the hundreds of millions annually, with the trail network alone stretching close to 29,000 kilometers, enough distance to circle a meaningful chunk of the globe without ever leaving federal parkland. For a visitor from a country you can cross by train in 3 hours, hearing that a single national park could swallow their entire homeland tends to produce the kind of stunned silence no highlight reel can fake. Would you rather grow up somewhere small enough to know every corner of it, or somewhere so vast you could spend a lifetime and still not see it all? Safety is where the stereotypes and the lived experience clash the hardest. Plenty of European visitors arrive having absorbed a steady diet of headlines about American gun violence and crime. And they're not wrong that those headlines exist for real reasons. This is a country with real documented challenges around firearms that don't have a clean equivalent across most of Europe, and no honest video on this topic should pretend otherwise. But what a lot of these tourists are reporting isn't a contradiction of that data so much as a different layer of the same country clean, well-lit host city downtowns during tournament weeks. Visibly present but relaxed law enforcement working the crowds, security lines that move with more banter than tension, and matchday crowds that, by most tournament accounts so far, have stayed orderly even in cities hosting 6-figure attendances. It's less the danger stereotype was fake, and more the danger stereotype was incomplete.
No.
Not even exaggerate.
No. So we went in and the people working there were nothing but kind and lovely and welcoming, like straight over to us with a big smile, and you know, like that southern drawl, like the lady was calling me baby and I was like, oh my gosh.
A country big enough to contain both realities depending on where you're standing, which is a harder story to tell in a single headline, but it's the one actually showing up on the ground this summer. Money is where things get genuinely complicated, and this is worth sitting with instead of glossing over, because the real numbers cut both ways. As of early 2026, the U.S. federal minimum wage sits at $7.25 an hour lower, in raw dollar terms, than Germany's roughly $15.82 equivalent, and lower than most Western European minimums outright. States can and do set their own higher floors, so the real picture varies wildly depending on which state a worker happens to live in. But once you move past the minimum wage and look at average earnings across the whole labor market, the picture flips. Average gross pay in the U.S. runs meaningfully higher than in a country like Germany, and U.S. GDP per capita sits well above most of Western Europe's. So a European tourist meeting an American worker on this trip might hear two completely different stories depending on who they talk to. A fast food worker whose hourly floor is genuinely lower than their European counterparts, or a mid-career professional whose take-home pay, even after accounting for the higher cost of things like healthcare, comes out ahead. Neither story is the whole truth by itself. The honest version is that America runs a wider spread between its floor and its ceiling than most of the European economies these visitors grew up in. More room to fall, but also more room to climb. And which one of those matters more to you probably says more about your own life than it does about either country.
I thought Americans were maybe slightly exaggerating about their trucks until somebody handed me the keys to this. This is no normal Ford truck. This is a 6.7 turbo diesel dually platinum Ford F350. That's a whole mouthful.
Patriotism is the piece that seems to catch Europeans most off guard, mostly because it doesn't map onto anything they grew up with. Flags on porches in ordinary residential neighborhoods. The national anthem sung with genuine emotion before matches that aren't even the national team's biggest games. Small towns that empty out for a Friday night high school football game. The way European towns empty out for a cup final. It registers as intense to visitors from countries where overt nationalism carries a heavier, more complicated history. A German fan documenting a small-town tailgate described feeling almost disoriented by how unself-consciously proud everyone seemed to be. Not of a specific policy or party, but of the place itself. Whatever you think of it politically, and reasonable people land in very different places on that question, it's clearly one of the emotional threads holding together everything else on this list. The scale, the stranger's kindness, the size of the parks. It all gets wrapped, for better or worse, in the same flag. Food might be the most purely fun category, mostly because it involves the least controversy and the most audible cursing when European tourists try American proportions for the first time. Drive-through culture alone tends to floor visitors from countries where fast food is more of an occasional stop than a full parallel food system, order-ahead lanes, 24-hour diners, entire meals built around a single protein the size of a dinner plate. Free refills, a concept that barely exists across most of Europe, has been documented as a genuine point of visitor confusion more than once, with more than one traveler openly unsure whether they were allowed to just keep refilling a soda without paying again. Tipping culture cuts the other way. A lot of European visitors find the 18 to 20% expectation genuinely stressful rather than generous, since most of their home countries build service pay into the base wage instead of leaving it to the diner's math skills at the end of a meal. And regional food identity turns out to be its own culture shock. A European visitor expecting American food to mean one thing quickly discovers Nashville hot chicken, Texas barbecue, and a New England lobster roll have about as much in common with each other as three completely different countries' cuisines would. So here's where all of this lands. A lot of these visitors came in with 16% fewer bookings than expected, with headlines about crime and inequality already loaded in their heads, with a general sense that they were doing America a favor by showing up at all. And a meaningful number of them are leaving, having posted some version of a public walkback, not a full political conversion. Nobody's rewriting their worldview over a barbecue sandwich, but a genuine admission that the gap between the headline version of the country and the lived, tournament week version of the country was bigger than they expected. That's not proof that one side of the internet's endless America versus Europe argument was right and the other was wrong. It's proof that both places are more complicated up close than they are from 4,000 miles away, and that an awful lot of strong opinions about a country get formed by people who have never actually stood in it. So the question worth sitting with isn't which country wins some imaginary scoreboard. It's this: would you rather trust the headlines about a place, or the version you'd only get by actually going there yourself? Because this tournament has turned into a pretty large, mostly accidental experiment answering exactly that question, one gas station and one stunned tourist at a time. If this kind of comparison is something you want more of, go ahead and like this video, share it with the friend who always argues with you about which continent has it better, and subscribe with notifications on so you don't miss the next one in this series. This video is a compilation of publicly available social media reactions, tourism data, national statistics, and travel journalism gathered around the 2026 World Cup, put together for entertainment and discussion purposes. It reflects individual traveler experiences and publicly reported figures, not the complete social, political, or economic reality of any country, and it isn't not intended as a definitive judgment on any nation, government, or culture. Numbers and situations described here come from public sources current as of mid-2026 and may shift as the tournament continues. Viewers are encouraged to look into the original reporting themselves rather than treat any single video, including this one, as the final word.